Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Miranda. I'm a wife and a full-time working mom. I have a 3-year-old little girl, and my husband and I are expecting our second baby, a little boy, to join our family sometime around June the 1st. So I'm currently 34 weeks pregnant. Today's video is going to talk about my journey towards pregnancy. I wanted to go ahead and talk about it both with my daughter and with now my son coming into the world, and just talk about my journey towards actually getting pregnant. There's tons of women out there who struggle with infertility, and with this week being National Infertility Week, I wanted to share my story. And so if you like these kind of videos that are all things mom related, pregnancy, definitely subscribe to my channel, give the video a thumbs up, leave comments down below talking about your pregnancy journey and how your beautiful babies came into the world, and just join in with the community so we can all connect to one another. And so without any more talking and going on and on, let's jump in and get started with the video. So talking about my journey towards getting pregnant. So my husband and I decided after about a year and a half or so of being married that we wanted to start our family. And so I had been on birth control, but I was not very consistent with it whatsoever. I'm very bad at taking pills and remembering those kind of things. And so never was I ever consistent with it, but I stopped it completely. And what I did was actually went and finally saw an OBGYN. So I had not actually been to an OBGYN up until the point of doing family planning, which was my very first appointment I ever went to with her. All of my appointments beforehand had all been with just like a family practitioner, basically, because my husband and I got married really young. So I was 19 when my husband and I got married. And so by the time we decided to start, having a family and wanted to start on that journey, I was 20. So we were young. And so I really hadn't had a need to go to an OBGYN as of yet, because I could get my birth control through a family doctor, and that's what I had been doing. So I found this doctor through coworkers of mine of where I was working at the time, who had talked about struggles with getting pregnant. And I just kind of knew that was going to be something that I went through based on just my history. My cycles have always been super irregular from the moment that I got my very first one. I was late into the game, like a late bloomer basically, with getting my cycle. And when I finally did get one, they were super inconsistent and very irregular, and they always have been that way. They've never regulated themselves. And so I always had that feeling that when it came to actually getting pregnant, that my journey wasn't going to be just like, oh, boom, I can hop off of birth control, we can try for like a month or two, and then, oh, wow, I'm pregnant, right? I just knew it wasn't going to happen that way. Now, I'm not going to come on here and say that I've had the most difficult journey with getting pregnant, because I haven't. I definitely have not. There are so many women out there who struggle for years and years and years and years without being able to have children, who go through so many miscarriages, who have to go through IVF. Like, that's not my story, but I'm also not one of those women who, like I said, can just hop off my birth control and then even like 6 months later, oh wow, I'm pregnant. It doesn't happen that way for me. So when I went to my doctor, when I did the family planning appointment with her, sat down, kind of told her about my journey and like what had gone on throughout my life with my cycles and stuff like that. And so we had certain things done, like I got my thyroid tested, my hormone levels tested, all that kind of stuff, which all came back normal, which I was grateful for, but it didn't really answer the question as to why my body didn't do what it was supposed to do. And really the only answer my doctor could give me was that it's almost like I had PCOS, which for those of you who do not know is polycystic ovarian syndrome, without actually having PCOS, which sounded super weird to me, because I was like, well, how could I have it but not have it? And she was like, you basically have all of some of the symptoms of it. And so with that, she had me start doing different medications, one of them being progesterone to actually help me have cycles how I needed to. She did want me to hop on Clomid as well. Clomid was not something that I never actually wound up taking, because I just didn't feel comfortable with that personally. Everybody's journey is different. I know tons of women out there who have taken it, who have had success stories with it, and that's awesome. It's just not something I personally wanted to do. And so I did hop on the progesterone because I wanted to get my cycles to where, I mean, if I'm not having a cycle every month, then obviously it takes even longer for me to get pregnant because I don't have a chance every single month. We can only work in within the window of when I have one every 3 to 4 months, right? So I hopped on the progesterone, which is, again, it's a medication. You take it for 5 days. Within the 5 days, you're supposed to either get a cycle, or up to 2 weeks after taking the progesterone, you can have a cycle. Mine typically happened, and I got my cycle right when I finished the medication, I believe, like either on the 5th day or like the day after I had finished out the 5 days of pills. And so progesterone was not easy on me personally. Like, I remember taking it and I was super irritable. I gained weight, which are side effects of it, and I did not like it whatsoever. It did not make me feel good. The cycles weren't bad, like they weren't extra heavy or anything like that, but I just didn't enjoy the way that it made me feel. And so it wasn't something I wanted to consistently keep taking. Then on top of that, she had me take another supplement called Pregnitude, which isn't like a proven supplement to work, but I figured, you know what, why not give it a try? It was like a more natural way to help with getting pregnant. It's basically a supplement that it's a powder you pour it into your water and then you drink it. I think it was like twice a day. And so they're in these little packet forms. And so I hopped on, I was taking those two. And then, like I said, she wanted me taking the Clomid as well. She wanted me going in, getting my blood drawn after a certain amount of time, but it just wasn't part of the journey that I wanted to take on. And I still agree with that. There are times where, don't get me wrong, I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I could have gotten pregnant sooner, or, you know, if it would have been easier hopping on the Clomid, but everything happens the way it does for a reason. So there's a reason I didn't hop on and take it. And from all of the symptoms and side effects that I've heard it can bring, I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I stuck to my gut and that I just went through with what I was working with. Because what she described to me when I went in and again had my family planning appointment with her was that I can, because my cycles are irregular, I can have a cycle and not actually ovulate. And then I can ovulate and not have a cycle. So I can ovulate without having one, which I didn't believe at first or think could happen. But we'll get to that here in a few. So that was in January, right? I honestly don't remember the year, but it had to have been, it would have been January of 2015 because my daughter was born in 2016. So in January of 2015 was when I went in and I saw her, had all these done. Went the entire year, basically. I wasn't consistent with taking my progesterone, and I was consistent with taking the Pregnitude. That I did do. I would get the 30-day supplies of it, and every month I would be taking that, but I definitely wasn't consistent with taking the progesterone like I needed to. So December came around, right around Christmas time. And I remember because the company I worked for at the time gave us really big Christmas breaks. So they would give us from Christmas Eve until New Year's Day off, almost like being in school again, basically, because it was a school that I worked for. So it was really cool. But I remember, being at my house, and it was during Christmas break, and I was cleaning up and stuff like that. And I looked at the table and all the supplements that I needed to put away, my pills and whatnot. And I just sat there and I thought, do I really want to keep doing this? Do I really want to keep putting my body through taking these pills, taking these supplements? Like, it's not working. It had already been almost a year at that point, and it wasn't working. And I felt super defeated. And I'm a very impatient person. That is one thing about me. And I feel like this was a big test of my patience, among other things. But I'm extremely impatient. I have some of the worst patience in the world, especially when it comes to stuff like this. And I get very down on myself just because it's hard when for me, the hardest part was sitting here and having the thought in my head of, I was created to have kids. That's part of the reason as to why I'm a woman in the first place. And you can, have whatever you want to say about that. I'm not saying it to be derogatory in any way. I'm saying it as like I feel grateful. I love being a woman, and I love the fact that I can have children and recreate life. I think it's one of the most amazing things in the entire world. And I felt very disappointed in myself because I couldn't make that happen. And to me, it was one of those things where I was like, how can I not do what I was created to do? How can my body not function and do what it's supposed to be doing. Why does it not work on its own? Why do I have to go through all of this stuff? So if I'm feeling that with just having to be on a couple of like a medication and a supplement and only going through this for a year, I can only imagine what other women feel when they struggle with this for years and years and years on end. When they get pregnant and have miscarriages, I can only imagine what you're going through. And if you've experienced that, I am so sorry from the bottom of my heart. And I hope and pray that your beautiful baby is going to be in your arms soon if you are struggling with infertility at the moment. Because I know a portion of how hard it can be, but I don't know your full story. But I sat there and I looked at all the medicines and everything like that. And I just said, I'm done. And I prayed. And I said, Lord, you know what? I am trying to have a lot of control over a situation that I cannot control in any way. And so I'm done. You know, it's in your hands. And whenever I am supposed to get pregnant, it will happen and I will get pregnant. And so I stopped all of those, but I went back to my doctor after about like the week I went back to work. My husband and I actually both went because I was like, listen, I need you to come with me because I want to at least find out what's going on with my body and why it's doing what it's doing. So we go back to my doctor and she recommended that I have an HCG done, which I honestly don't remember like the big medical term for it, but basically what it was a procedure where she wanted to inject dye into my cervix and then take an x-ray to see if I had any scarring or blockage or what was going on with like my tubes and everything like that. So I thought about it, but kind of like sat back and didn't do it for a while. Like right after she had written out the paperwork for me to go to the like lab where they did all this stuff. So mid-January, almost end of January rolled around and I decided I wanted to go ahead and have the procedure done. Now, in order to have this procedure done, you have to have recently had a cycle. You can't just go in because they want to make sure that you're not pregnant. That way, because this like the procedure can cause you to have a miscarriage. So I was like, I want to know what's going on. Can this give me any insight as to like why my cycles are irregular and stuff like that? Because my doctor had wanted me to be on progesterone just to like on a regular basis to regulate my cycles, because she said it wasn't good for me not to have a cycle every month because it can lead to cancers and all this other kind of stuff. And so I'm like, what can I do to try to help regulate my cycles, right? Like what's going on? And so I decided, let me do this procedure. I want to see what's going on. Can this help at all with not just trying to get pregnant, but me figuring out why my body does what it does in the first place? So I went and got a pregnancy test because I hadn't had a cycle yet, and I was going to jump back onto progesterone because I had a cycle in December. I remember I had a cycle in December. It was on my own, no progesterone. It was a cycle that my body just had by itself, no medication inducing it or anything like that. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't pregnant. Really did not think that I was at all. I had not been feeling any symptoms, nothing. I had really just thought that the test was going to come back negative, as they always did whenever I took them. I got it just to be on the safe side because, again, when you're hopping on progesterone too, it can also cause you to have miscarriages. So I was going to hop back on the progesterone because I knew I wasn't naturally going to have a cycle on my own for another like 3 or 4 months. So I wanted to get the procedure done that month. So I was going to hop on to the medicine, get a cycle, and then go in and have the procedure done. So my husband and I, we went and got a pregnancy test. I didn't take it until the following morning because, you know, they say do it with first morning urine because it's the most potent, has the best accuracy, whatnot. And it was a Monday. And I remember it was a Monday because at that time I was on a Tuesday through Saturday working schedule. And I woke up early first thing in the morning when my husband was leaving and getting ready for work, and went to the bathroom, took the test. It was a digital, it was a clear blue digital test. And so again, wasn't expecting anything of it. I've just kind of sat there waiting for the test to do its thing. And those digital tests, like, they feel like they take a million years whenever you're waiting on the results for them. I swear, I felt like I was sitting there for 20, 30 minutes, even though it wasn't that long. And so I had it kind of like sitting on our shower ledge, and my husband and I were talking, and I looked down at the test, you know, the little line is still going, the little dots or whatever that are saying it's going up. And then I go and I look again, and it's done, and it says pregnant. And I'm sitting there like doing a double take, like, no way, there's no possible way that I'm pregnant right now. This can't be happening. And so I'm looking at the test and I just start crying because I can't believe it. I wasn't feeling anything. I felt like my normal, regular self, no symptoms whatsoever. And it was one of those things where I had seen so many negative tests at that point that I never expected to see a positive. And I know that that sounds super, like, really silly, but again, when you've gone through the journey and when you have sat there and you've seen nothing but negative after negative after negative after negative and gotten your hopes up so many times just to have them defeated, it's really, really hard to believe it when it actually comes true. So I didn't. I could not believe it. I was like, is this wrong? Can I get like a false negative? Like, is this true? And, you know, of course I start crying and my husband, he comes in and what's wrong? What's going on? And I show him the test. Couldn't even do it in a way of surprising him because he was right there in the house with me still. And, at that point, I called my doctor's office. You know, I told them I just got a positive pregnancy test. And so they scheduled me to come in about like 4 weeks after that because based on my last cycle date, they were like, oh, you're probably about 4 weeks along. And so I took multiple tests. I literally was taking pregnancy tests every single day until I had my first doctor's appointment because I still could not believe it. And it didn't matter how many positive ones I got. It was still that there's no way I'm pregnant right now. So of course, you know, we go to the first doctor's appointment. I was like 8 weeks along, and hearing her heartbeat for the first time, seeing that precious little life on the screen was just the most amazing thing in the entire world to me. And I am so grateful and so thankful that it happened the way that it did, because it really taught me to have more trust and more faith and to let go and to realize that unfortunately it is a situation I don't have control over, and that no matter how hard I try, it's going to happen when it's meant to happen. And that's such a hard thing to grasp, and it's nothing anybody who is going through this journey wants to hear, but it's the truth. You know, these beautiful babies are brought into the world to not just for our enjoyment, but to become, you know, functioning members of society and to put their special mark on the world too. And so there's a certain time frame and a certain reason that every single one of them is born into the world. And, you know, I believe the exact same thing with my son, because even getting pregnant with my son, you know, my daughter's 3. And I definitely didn't, by the time he's born, she'll be close to 4. Her birthday's in September and he's due June 1st. So she'll be 3 months away from being 4. So they're almost 4 years apart. And that definitely wasn't initially what I had wanted, of course. I wanted them to be closer in age. I didn't expect to have them so far apart, but again, it's something that was out of my control. But a very similar thing happened with my son that happened with my daughter. I went into my doctor for my annual exam in June of 2020, in June of 2018. Or 2017, something like that. No, 2018, because my daughter was 2 at that point, or almost 2 at that point. And I told her that I wanted to try to have a baby again. And I had not been on birth control after having my daughter. After having my daughter, I did breastfeed. I breastfed her up until she was about 10 months old. But my cycle never returned. My cycle returned when she was 14 months. So it was a long time after having her that my cycles actually came back in the first place. And I was really hoping and praying that they would regulate now that my body had gone through having a baby. And they didn't, sadly. It was still that they were coming every 3 to 4 months or so. And so it was, you know, not ideal, but you know, it happened the way it happens for a reason. And so I had not been on any birth control. I didn't want to hop back on it. And again, even if I had been, I'm really, really bad about taking pills, so I never consistently do them. And I didn't want to do the shot. I didn't want to do an IUD. I didn't have any birth control. So that's 3 years of no birth control and not getting pregnant. And not that we were actively trying or that I was taking ovulation tests, but we weren't preventing it either. That was kind of always our thing, is we weren't trying, but we're not preventing it at the same time too. And so with him, I went in for my annual exam. It was in June, I believe. And so went in for that. And I told my doctor, you know, I want to get pregnant. I want to have a baby again. What do I do? What can I do? And pretty much it was the same thing, you know, hop on progesterone, hop on Clomid, and stuff like that. And I really highly considered taking Clomid. I did not want to do the progesterone again, but I really thought about Clomid, and I thought about it like pretty intently this time. And I thought, well, what if I just do it? You know, what if I just start taking the pills, see what happens? And I had heard a lot of horror stories about Clomid, and I really didn't want to hop on and start taking the medicine. I had heard a lot of women having super bad side effects of it, and I just didn't know if I wanted to deal with that. And then after talking to my husband about it and telling him about everything that can happen, he was like, I don't know if I want you taking that. So it was something that I thought about but never actually wound up doing. However, when I did have cycles, I would go in and have my blood work done as if I had taken the Clomid to see if I was ovulating. And the challenge with that is that when you're on Clomid, right, because it's a medication to make you ovulate. So they want, at least my doctor, I think every doctor does it differently. My doctor wanted me to go in taking Clomid on cycle day 21 to have my test done to see how my levels were rising and everything like that. And they always came back as if I had never ovulated, because when you have irregular cycles, you're not ovulating on the same basis as a normal 28-day cycle would, right? Whereas most women have either a 28-day or like a 32-day cycle. Mine are like, 120 days and 90 days to 120 days. Like, I can't even track. The sad part is I can't even track these on pregnancy or not pregnancy, but like, well, yeah, pregnancy apps or the apps for trying to get pregnant that are out there, like Glow or you know, whatever other ones for like tracking your cycles and stuff. You can't even put in 120-day cycles or more than that, because sometimes mine would go more than that. So it's a little frustrating because it's very hard to try to track anything when they can't track it. And when you're trying to track it, you have to have multiple ones before it can really get any kind of pattern down or give you any information to try to help you with getting pregnant. And mine, if I was doing that for them to have accurate information, I'd have to be on this thing for an entire year, because I can probably only have 3 to 4 cycles within a year with my body going the way that it normally does. So it's frustrating and it's a little hard to deal with, but I wasn't tracking it on any apps because I had learned with my daughter and trying to get pregnant with her, it was a waste of my time. So I just started taking some ovulation tests whenever I did have a cycle come naturally and on my own. And so we weren't really like trying, but again, we were somewhat trying. I just wasn't being very consistent with how I was doing everything, because in the midst of us trying to have another baby, we were also moving. We were putting our house on the market, we were renovating it, and then eventually we wound up moving into the home we're in right now. And so around July, we moved into this house in September. So I finally get a text from my doctor saying that I'm supposed to go in for my annual exam, right? Again, that it was due again, because it had already been a year again at that point. And so I just never scheduled it, because again, we had so much going on with renovating the house, closing on our old house, moving into the new one. And so life was just crazy at the time, where me going in for an exam honestly wasn't at the top of my priority list. And so we move into the house that we're in right now. We move into our new home in September. We're getting situated, we're getting settled. So about a month after being in our house, I started feeling really weird and just really like not myself. So the last cycle that I actually had on my own was in July. It was right when we put our previous home that we lived in on the market, and like we had the pictures come in and get done. It was like that very day. So it was July the 10th. It was the last day that I had my cycle. Okay. So I'm sitting here thinking, because it's October, so July, August, September, October. Yeah, it was October. So I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to be getting another cycle sometime soon. That's why I feel the way I do, because I was super irritable. I was so grumpy. I had been snapping at my husband for every little thing. I felt really bad for him, but like I was really irritable. I was very tired. My boobs had started hurting. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'm getting my period. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. Like and I was cramping too. I had been cramping quite a bit. And so I was like, okay, I'm not, it can't be, like, I really didn't think that I was pregnant again, or that that had actually happened. I was like, there's no way. Like, it's been, how would I just now be pregnant? If I had been pregnant, I would have known about this for like 2 months already at this point, because I had been taking pregnancy tests after my cycle in July to see, did it happen? And they were all negative. And so I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. There's no way I'm pregnant. No, it's not happening. So the feeling kept going though, like for a week, I felt the cramping and just like man, I'm really tired and I'm still kind of irritated and like really irritable. And then I started getting nauseous. And so I was like, could I be pregnant? Could I really, like, I did not believe it. I was like, it's just not possible. Like, it has to be that my cycle's coming on, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I go to Target, I get a pregnancy test. I went before I went into work. It was my late day going into work, so I had a little bit of free time, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna run into Target, I'm gonna get a pregnancy test, it's gonna come back negative, and then maybe I'll get my cycle next week. And then now that we're moved and settled, maybe I can be a little more consistent with tracking my ovulation and everything like that. So that's what I did. And I go, as soon as I get into work, I clock in, I sit down, kind of get situated, run to the bathroom and take the test real quick. And it was a first response, it had like the 3 little tests, and I was so irritated, I remember, because they didn't have just like the little 2 tests, because pregnancy tests are expensive, and so they didn't have just like the 2-pack of the regular first response test that's like $6.99 or whatever. And I was so upset because I had to buy more expensive pregnancy tests, and I was like, if this comes back negative and I wasted this money on pregnancy tests, I'm gonna be so mad right now, so mad. So it's going and it's going and it's going, it's filling up, and I'm just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, and I'm like, okay, is it gonna be negative? It's just gonna be negative. So I'm looking at the test, right? Because again, I'm not expecting anything. So I'm looking at the test, I'm watching it fill up, and I see that it hits the test line, right? So that you have your control line and then you have your test line. And so it goes, and I can kind of see a little bit of the control line, but then I see it pops up on the test line too. And I was like, no way, this isn't happening right now. This isn't possible. And so it keeps going, and the line gets a little bit darker and a little bit darker and a little bit darker. And it was a very faint line. It was not, super thick. It did not match the test line. It wasn't the same darkness. It was, a fainter line, but not super faint to where I was questioning it. You could definitely see a line there. It just wasn't as, noticeable as the test line, obviously. And so I'm looking at it and just freaking out, thinking, oh my gosh, I am pregnant. There is no way this is happening right now. Holy smokes. And so I run back to my office and I grab the, because it was like the regular first response test and then a digital test too. And so I grab the digital test, and I'm like, I go in and I run into my boss's office, and I'm like, do you see, because they had known that I really wanted to, have another baby and stuff. And so I'm showing her the test, and I'm like, do you see this? Do you see a line on here? Do you see a line on here? And she was like, oh my gosh, girl, yes, I see one. Oh, it's super faint though. And so I'm, of course, like freaking out, super excited. So I grab the digital test, I don't drink anything, wait until I have to pee again, go back and take the digital, and it comes back with a positive, a yes. And I was so over the moon, so excited. I, put the test side by side. I took a picture of them, sent them to my husband. I wanted to try to do something super cute, but again, I'm just a really impatient person, and when I'm super excited about something, I want to share it with someone, and who would I not want to share it with besides my husband? So I send him the picture of it, and I'm like, well, this just happened today. And he's like, are you serious? Because it was, again, one of those things where I just couldn't believe it. And what's so funny is that I had considered going in and having an HCG done again. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go to my doctor. I'm gonna have my annual exam done. I actually already had it scheduled. I was supposed to go in later that week because it was a Monday that I did this test. Again, it was on a Monday, And I was supposed to go in later that week for my annual exam, and I was going to tell my doctor I want to go ahead and have the HCG done and go in and get it, right? And so I was like, all right, well, you know what? I'm just going to take a pregnancy test, because if I'm pregnant, then I got to schedule my appointment back later anyways. And so it was crazy how it all happened and how it all panned out. And you know what's funny is my husband says it now. He's like, you know, every time you think about going in and having this little procedure done, you wind up pregnant. And I was like, you're right, I do. That's so true. And so it was super funny. But this was a cycle where I ovulated, but I didn't have a period, and I got pregnant. And so to me, that was just so much so further proof of how little control I have over this, because with the way my body works and functions, I would literally have to take ovulation tests every single day of the year if I was trying to track this and really get pregnant on my own. And that is just so incredibly exhausting. And I know there's women out there who have done it. I've had friends who have done that before, but you know, having a little girl already, and again, with just all the moving and everything like that, there was no way I was gonna have time for that. And even if you don't have kids yet, like just trying to maintain a day-to-day life, it's really hard to do something like that and take ovulation tests every day, multiple times within the day. And then it gets pricey too, because those things are not cheap. So I just saw it as another sign and another way of God showing me, you have no control over this, so stop. Because again, we had really stopped trying to get pregnant, and we were just trying to get settled and situated into our house. And lo and behold, I was already pregnant as we were moving into our home. And it's just, I love my stories, and I love sharing my stories with people, because to me, again, I'm not a person who sits here and has the hardest journey in the world getting pregnant, but it's not the easiest for me either. And so I love sharing my stories with people, because especially when I hear of women who struggle with infertility, because to me, it's a way to connect, yes, but it's also a way of like giving hope is what my goal is, and saying that just because it's not happening now does not mean it's not going to happen for you. Wait and trust and do what you can, but don't go overboard with it at the same time. You know, just trust that it's going to happen when it's meant to happen. And I know that's so hard to hear. I know, because so many people told it to me so many times over and over again. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I can't wait. I want to have a baby right now. Like, that's the mindset. And as you know, having like a baby and having a daughter already, and then wanting to have another baby and like have siblings, I'm like, they're going to get further and further apart in age, and they're not going to be close to one another and stuff like that. And it was very hard. And it was very hard hearing that. Just trust that it'll happen when it's meant to be. But I had to trust it, because honestly, it happened when it was meant to happen, because I did nothing to actually try and get pregnant. It just happened with both my daughter and now with my son. And so that's my journey and my story on having the beautiful babies that I have right now, waiting on my second baby to come into the world. And I hope this story gives you some encouragement. I hope that off of it, you know that your time's gonna come, that you are gonna have a beautiful baby sitting in your arms. And just don't, as best as you can, don't stress about it, and trust in the timing of when they come. Because it will happen for you. If it happened for me, then it's going to happen for you guys too. So if this is a battle and a journey that you're going through, I'm praying for you. I am praying for that beautiful baby to come into your arms, for you to have peace and comfort in your heart until that happens. Sending all of the baby dust your way, and hoping that you get to have exciting announcements here in the near future for you guys too. So please, again, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video today. Thank you for taking the time to listen and to be a part of this journey with me. And I hope to have really good news from you guys soon. Post, again, your pregnancy journeys in the comments below, so that we can all share positive and exciting stories with one another, to encourage the moms out there who are struggling right now with trying to have babies of their own. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.